Next up, we've got the Green Party candidate for the PPE mock general election debate on the 12th of May. Sam Porter is the current president of the Warwick Green Party. Sam, how are you?
I'm right, thanks. Cheers for having me on.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for coming on. First things first, this election so far was called by Theresa May fairly last minute, and she kept repeatedly saying that she wasn't going to call a snap general election, and did. Did you expect the election?
I am in a situation where I have to kind of eat my hat because I kept saying there won't be an early general election because of the Fixed Term Parliament Act. I think what we have to ask ourselves is, would there have been an early general election if Labour weren't doing so badly in the polls? I think this is just political opportunism. So I think with hindsight we can see that it was probably likely to happen, but obviously we made the mistake of believing something Theresa May said.
Now, of course, the local elections was something that happened very recently, and as we can see, that election that was very much in place, the Conservatives completely swept the board. I mean, they did fantastically. Every other party other than your party made losses. Will we expect something similar on general election night, do you think? A Tory wipeout?
As much as I would like something else to happen, I think that is the way that it was looking. The Labour Party are just in such a mess right now. They've got a far-left leader who half the party hates. The Liberal Democrats aren't really looking that strong either. And I think what's really working to the Conservatives' advantage is Theresa May is really taking them to the right on lots of issues such as Brexit and immigration. And that's playing really well with kind of the people who voted UKIP last time and maybe voted Labour before that, but now considering voting Conservative. So I think it is looking pretty dismal for those on the progressive left side. And I think why this is actually an opportunity to put aside our tribal loyalties and work together. I think there's been instances already of local parties cooperating. And personally, that's the only way I can see anything but a gigantic Tory landslide majority.
What are your thoughts on this kind of progressive alliance then? Because as we see in Brighton, I think the Lib Dems have stood aside in favour of Caroline Lucas. Recently, the Greens have said they'll stand aside in Twickenham and Richmond to support the Liberal Democrat candidates. What are your thoughts on the kind of premise? Do you think it's actually practical, a progressive alliance?
I think the emphasis here should be the progressive alliance. And I think so far what we've seen, especially of Labour, is that they're not really willing to give anything in return. So we've stepped down in Ealing to back the Labour candidate there. I believe we've stepped down in Brighton Kemp Town. And so I think we're unilaterally showing that we actually care about the country before our own tribal loyalties. But again, as I was saying, this is a progressive alliance and Labour have to give something back. So I think it would be a nice gesture potentially if they step down in Brighton Pavilion, where Caroline Lucas is a fantastic local MP, and maybe stood down in Isle of Wight, where we actually are the best positioned progressive party to beat the Conservatives. So I think this isn't going to come from the leadership. The Labour leadership are completely opposed to this. They see themselves as the only left of centre party and view us as badly as the Conservatives, which is just ridiculous. But I think at a local level, lots of different parties, can do this and work together to stop this runaway Tory majority.
You talk about, obviously, the Greens having Caroline Lucas in Brighton Pavilion, and they might gain that Isle of Wight seat. But other than that, I mean, are the Green Party an irrelevance in British politics? Many people see them as a kind of one-woman party with Caroline Lucas as the leader and the only well-known figure within the party.
I think you kind of addressed 2 points there. Like, us, if we're still at relevance, and also Caroline Lucas being the most known person. I'm going to take those two separately, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of irrelevance, I'm not sure if I actually like the question, because what we see, and this is Labour do this especially, is they only view politics in the UK as winning elections. Politics is so much more than this. I work very closely with the South Leamington Green Party, and they're out there every single weekend doing campaigns for the local environment, for local poverty and homelessness. And so I think it would be rich to go and tell those people who work very hard for local issues that they're no longer relevant. I think also beyond that, in actually just talking about elections, I think we are still very relevant. And I think this because there is a void in British politics right now for a left-wing, strongly internationalist party. Labour's position on Brexit is ambiguous. Do they want us to stay? Do they want us to leave? Do they want a soft Brexit? I'm not sure. I don't trust the Liberal Democrats' anti-austerity credentials. Just today it came out that Tim Farron had a poster of Margaret Thatcher over him as a teenager. So I don't really trust the Lib Dems' anti-austerity credentials. So there is a gap for a left-wing, strongly internationalist party, and I think the Greens are best positioned to fill that. Just keep going there with Corbyn. I think Corbyn's fantastic. I voted for Corbyn in 2015, but the fact is I like him a lot more than most of the MPs in his party. So ask me this question discussion again if we're going to be relevant in 2-3 months. I don't know if he's still going to be around after what's likely to be quite a bad loss in the general election. On the idea that Caroline Lucas is the most known person in our party, this is correct. She is very well known, and for good reason, because she's fantastic. But we have lots of fantastic figures as well in our party that don't get much recognition. We've got Natalie Bennett, who's running a fantastic campaign in Sheffield West. We've got our MEP Molly Scott-Cato going for Bristol West, who I think has a real chance of beating the Labour incumbent. And we've just got fantastic candidates across the board. I think what happens here is that the media is not fantastic at reporting what the Greens are doing, and this is because we get our head down, we work hard, and we avoid controversy. In the local elections, we got 40 times as many seats as UKIP, who are just demolished, and yet the media are still fascinated at talking about the UKIP experiment and all these things because they say silly things and they get publicity for ourselves. The Greens don't really get much publicity, so I think actually it's kind of the media's fault that there is so much focus on Caroline Lucas.
You said that the Labour Party were quite ambiguous on Brexit. What's the Green Party's position on Brexit?
I think the Green Party's position on Brexit is that when we voted for Brexit, we didn't know exactly what Brexit was going to be. It was just an EU yes or no. And there are lots of very good, very internationalist people, like myself, who have problems with the EU. And so I think when we asked that question, we didn't know exactly what Brexit would be. And I think the whole Brexit means Brexit thing for last year, that really doesn't help clarify the matter. And so I think what should happen is that we should have whoever's forming the next government, I'm assuming it's going to be Theresa May and the Conservatives, should negotiate how we leave. What's looking very likely right now is that we'll get no deal and it'll leave our country facing a very, very tough future in our relationship with Europe. I think the terms of the exit should then be put to a referendum so people can know exactly what they're voting on very specifically.
The Liberal Democrat position on that, which is fairly similar to yours, saying that that makes them anti-democratic, that makes you anti-democratic as well, doesn't it? You don't listen to the British people.
Just a point of Liberal Democrats, Tim Farron seems to be kind of going back on this now because he realised lots of his target seats are in Leave voting areas such as my home, the South West. So he's now gone from second referendum to we're going to stop a hard Brexit. And saying that he's a Eurosceptic. So I'm not actually sure how much the Liberal Democrats are committing to this. On the issue of whether it's anti-democratic, the referendum was very, very narrow. It was 48 to 52%, and those 48% have a right to be represented just as much as the 52%. I'm not saying that you completely ignore the wishes of the 52%, but you have to balance them out. And I think it wouldn't be anti-democratic because there'd be a very, very good discussion again about it, and I think it would enhance the democratic process regarding the most important decision in British politics in our generation.
And Sam, also, just finally, what are your predictions for this upcoming general election?
My predictions, or I'd hope.
Your predictions?
Even as a Green, I'd hope that Jeremy Corbyn would be going into number 10, but I'm afraid I can't predict that. I would rather always be pessimistic in these scenarios and optimistic because then there's only room for waking up on June the 9th and going, whew, that wasn't as bad as I thought. But honestly, I think it's just going to be an absolute disaster. And not just because of the polls, it's also the kind of people who are switching from UKIP to Tory or Labour to Tory. It's especially those who are living in the Leave constituencies, which Labour have a vast number of, and who feel very, very let down by how Labour have just embraced neoliberalism for the last 20 years. So honestly, I could see Labour going sub 150 seats and the Tories well over 400. It's not going to be fun.
And just finally as well, are you looking forward to speaking for the Green Party in this PPE mock general election hustings?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, the Greens just are not given a voice, often not. And we have a lot of good things to say, not just the environment. We are sticking up for LGBT plus rights, for social justice, for defending those on food banks. So I think giving a Green voice there is going to be essential. And I think when people hear a Green voice, they like what they hear. So thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Sam.